Welcome to the sākihiwē Music Mentorship Panel. And today we are joined by Tiffany, Ayalik, Kinnie, Starr, Amero, ShoShona, Kish, and MJ Dandeneau. My name is Leanne, Goose, and I'm here as your moderator today. And we've got some interesting topics for you to learn and ask questions about from this dynamic panel of talented people from across Turtle Island. And I'm going to turn it over to Tiffany Ayalik to introduce herself and tell us a little bit about what she does and how she does it.
Thanks, Leanne. Nice to be hanging out with a fellow Delta, fellow Inuk on the panel. It's harder and harder to see people from back home these days. So nice to see you. My name is Tiffany Ayalik. I am originally from Yellowknife, Northwest Territories. My family comes from the Kogloktuk region in Nunavut. And I do lots of things, some of them musical, some of them not. I'm in Pilksuk, performing as Pilksuk with my sister. We're a throat singing band, and we fuse traditional throat singing and lots of looping and layers and sort of an electronic feel as well. I'm an actor, a filmmaker, performer, playwright. I write also for film and TV. So I have a lot of these kind of worlds that all come together around music, which is great. And I'm able to be kind of threading music through a lot of my different disciplines that I work and perform in. Right now I am a professional Zoom performer. I'm going to start adding that onto the old resume, is that I think we're all becoming live stream specialists right now. So yeah, that's a bit about me, and I've got a few albums out, and I'm excited to be sharing what I know, but also like asking you folks all questions, because I think you're all rad. So I'm going to be doing asking and learning from each other at the same time. So Juana.
Thank you so much. It's so great to hear from you. And I just want to say a big shout out to all the conference participants. Thanks so much for joining us. And don't forget to add your questions into the chat bar, and I'll do my best to answer or get some answers for you. We're going to turn things over to Kinnie, Starr. Kinnie, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everybody.
Oh, darn.
I'm based in British Columbia and Seychelles Territory here. Born and raised in Calgary, Alberta. Been living in Canada my whole life. I'm a mixture of Dutch, German, Mohawk, and Mohawk Irish. And I have been making music and art for 25 years. I was a graphic designer before I was doing music, and then I switched over into musical disciplines in the mid-90s. So I've been doing music now for over 2 decades, and I consider the strength of what I have to offer is primarily in layering genres and layering sounds. So my main discipline is hip hop, but I work in folk and rock as well. And I do a lot of sound design. I recently did the sound design for Bill Reed's 100th year anniversary here at the Bill Reed Gallery, and I'm doing more and more of that stuff, and I'm really grateful to be here with my peers and people that I respect and admire, because I have felt a little bit lost during the last 6 months, and actually longer than that. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, and so good to see your face. And we've missed you too. I've missed all of you. And we're going to turn things over to Don over in Winnipeg. And I've known Don for quite some time. He is my AMP camp cousin. And so I knew Don when Don was beatboxing. We used to do the breakdancing, right? Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's another life, Leanne. You used to know me when my hair was all black. That was the thing. Now
That's right. That's right. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you've been up to these days.
Yeah, so I'm a Winnipeg-born singer-songwriter. I have Cree and Métis roots on my mom's side. I have East Coast Acadian European descent on my dad's side. So I'm kind of I've always said a mixed breed, and but I've always felt the most connection to my Indigenous roots, because growing up here in Winnipeg, With my Indigenous family around me, it just felt like this purest connection for me. But musically speaking, I've been doing music now for full time for 14 years. I started doing this back in 2006, 2007. And it's been a crazy journey to do this, as you know, every one of us could probably attest to be able to do this as a full-time career. I've grown, evolved. I don't know how to exactly say it, but I've gone from sort of roots country. I actually started in the rock world, which was really bad for me. I was not very good at it. But I started there and then evolved into folk and roots, and now it's sort of like a little more country pop flavor. But I think my influences come from all over the map, and I'm lucky to have a team around me. I signed a record deal with MDM Recordings about almost 2 years ago now, and I have an EP coming out in about a couple of weeks. So yeah, there's lots going on. I'm a dad of 3, so that has kept me very busy in these strange times. But yeah, life goes on, and you know, I've definitely been able to adapt, as weirdly as that sounds, in all the changes going on. But yeah, so that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Cheers, cousin. And I'm going to go over to my very good friend, ShoShona Kish of Digging Roots. And some of you may have recognized her from some of her recent work with the Indigenous Music Summit. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us. I missed seeing your face.
I missed you too. I'm happy to see your face. You look great.
Thank you. You too. Tell us about yourself. What have you been up to? What do you do?
Yeah. Jauj Kobanezekwe Desnekazan Megazi Dodem Bachuanan Donjaba Ojibwe Anishinaabe. I'm ShoShona, and I live in Barrie, Ontario. That's where I'm coming at you from today on beautiful Three Fires of the Anishinaabe territory. There's also traditional roots for Wendat here, and Métis, and it's beautiful where I am, although a little bit chilly. So I'm a little sad that the sun and warmth are leaving us. But yeah, I've been like everybody, just trying to figure out what's happening. We were supposed to be on tour, you know, all summer. I think we were supposed to be in Australia right now. And I've been home for the longest that I can remember, and maybe since high school or something, in one spot. And that's been kind of wonderful and kind of weird. And mostly we're really good and finding new rhythms for ourselves here. I haven't been uber creative in this time. That hasn't dominated. I was hoping that I would be, and coping with all of the stress in my normal outlets, but that hasn't happened for me. I don't know how you guys are feeling out there, but it's starting to come back, and I'm starting to feel like I can maybe like let down that like vigilant, like watchfulness that I was feeling early, like where I was watching all the news and reading all of the things and checking in with, you know, my family every single day, and, you know, hovering over my dad who's in his 70s, and my mom who's also in her 70s, and my great aunties, and like being, you know, like totally micromanaging their lives. And be like, I don't like that at all. My dad told me he's riding the subway. I was like, I don't think you should do that, Dad. But and really just trying to be super safe. And I know that we all have different opinions and perspectives on this, and I have all these interesting conversations, but to me, it's just a matter of like not taking any risks for the people that I love, in the small chance that I can in any way put them in harm's way. So I've been doing a lot of thinking about that. But I'm also really working hard on the next edition of the summit and dreaming how we can come together in the future. And I actually think there's a lot of possibility as we are operating this way for, you know, those points of access to be overcome in new ways. And people are being really creative, and we're dreaming stuff. Yeah, and I'm also cooking up some exciting new projects, which I'm super tempted to talk about, but maybe for another time, because I mostly want to hear from everyone else. Really happy to be here. Thanks, Alan Gray Eyes and Jade and Lindsay for bringing us together. This means, you know, it's fun to do panels and talk about industry stuff, but for me, this is about community.
Yes.
Yeah. So happy to be here with you guys.
So happy to see you. And we're going to go over to my friend MJ over in Winnipeg. MJ Dandeneau is an incredible musician, and she's toured all over the world, and her wealth of experience can help us think and plan about how we'd like to tour and travel across the seas. MJ, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, funny guys. Oh my God, it is so great to be on Zoom and to see all their faces. It seems like it's like clear, like you could see everybody. It's like, oh, hi. I love it. I'd rather give you guys all hugs, but this is okay too. Myself, I'm from St. Boniface, Winnipeg, Manitoba, and the Red River settlement. And it's funny that I've never studied to be a musician, or I've never got into this industry wanting to be a musician or anything. I studied to be a sound engineer or work in filmmaking and things like that. And by my early touring abroad with Xavier Rudd and Ben Harper and Etta James and things like that, it really shaped who I was. And by doing that, it's my dad who taught me, if you're going to go into the music industry, you better learn the music business to survive in it. And so he started teaching me what to do in those moments. And when I was on tour with these artists, I would always connect with the booking agent, or I was connected with the promoter or the management or the tour manager, and ask questions. And by doing that, I got a lot of experience, and I got a lot of knowledge of how this industry works. And by doing that 15 years later, I'm helping Indigenous artists cross internationally and connect with the international market, and help achieve crossing the borders and things like that, and with production. And then it's weird because this time I'm a bit like ShoShona. I wasn't motivated, and it's the path kind of stops, and then you don't know what you're about to do, and you don't know what to do. And so it's funny that the sound designer part, or I guess not part, but like the sound design contracts, or like helping or whatever, came in, and I'm doing more production and sound design for films and theaters and things like that. But I think it's a very interesting world we live in, and I think things like this happen to make you stronger in a way, and to also I think it's also showing me what's important in this music industry, and what really is, like, to refocus your energy into the right place and why you're doing it and things like that.
Thank you so much for sharing all those pieces about yourselves. And I know that it's difficult during these times to try to connect and still have that feeling. Music is so much about just that vibration and that transition of love and appreciation for all those skills and talents that just seem to come together when you're on stage or when you're just in the room together. So I definitely am feeling it right now. And thanks so much for sharing your stories. I just wanted to ask, many of us, or many of you, are doing online shows now. How do you feel about that? Like, I see some comments saying, like, people aren't watching past 30 seconds. Some people are finding the challenges of just trying to get into the mood when they are doing the live online performances. Tiffany, I think I'm going to start with you. You are an actor, and you are also doing auditions by Zoom, which has to be really difficult. And then I'm going to go to you, Alita, just to start off this conversation. So Tiffany, would you have any insights to share with us about doing?
Yeah, well, it's funny with auditioning for film and TV side is that like I've always done like just in my home with my cell phone and my little like tripod, and that's kind of been normal, and had one Skype audition. But the nice thing about that is you can kind of like warn them up ahead of time and be like, sorry, my internet is like kind of bad right now, and like we'll just see how it goes. And then if you start and you kind of just like freeze, and then you can kind of like buy yourself some time if you're forgetting your line. So that's a nice thing.
That's awesome.
It's a little like life hack for you, a little no, but we've for sure been really blessed to be able to do live streams as part of a lot of festivals transitioning from, you know, their regular programming into some sort of online platform. And because like most of us, you know, we had a whole summer and into the fall booked for work. You know, I have 6-7 months kind of booked out, and then when the rug kind of gets pulled out from underneath you, is pretty devastating to be like, oh, at the beginning of lockdown, to be like, okay, well, are we just not going to make like our 7 months of money over, like, you know, that's like a lot of people's bread and butter, right, is touring over the season. But after that sort of initial panic set in, I think a lot of festivals did a really good job of transitioning into their sort of online versions of the festivals. And, you know, we've been lucky also to be able to do some like pre-records and not do like a full live kind of show, that they've been able to find a couple of camera people and some sound folks, and then like go into a space and still maintain physical distancing and do like a full performance and have it pre-recorded, and then that gets broadcast as a streaming performance, which has been really great, because then, you know, it does, you don't have to be worrying about the internet and like all of these things that we do these things because we want that real-time interaction and that real-time feedback from people, and that beautiful connection between, you know, surprise collaborators, or you know performing for people and having that sort of that real-time kind of love exchange happening. And I feel like it's taken a big transition for a lot of us, I think, to go, well, we're sending it out, and now it's just going to take a little bit longer for that to come back, because I still feel like people are tuning in and enjoying music, and that we're all kind of realizing that this is going to be our realities in some way, shape, or form for possibly the next 2-ish years, you know, like that this is kind of how, this is one of the ways in which live music has to be adapting and changeable. And, you know, we come from adaptable people.
Yes.
And we all we all need to sort of embrace that adaptability and ingenuity, and which, you know, is how a lot of us kind of walk around in the world, is a lot of our teachings are centered on that as well. So I think applying that into diversifying what we think of as performance, what we think of as, you know, live music, what we think of as collaboration, and just being really flexible, because I think that's the only way to move forward. As soon as we start to be super rigid about like what is and isn't, whatever, like I think as soon as we start to become a bit too rigid, that's when things can become limiting. And that's sort of the attitude that we've been trying to adopt, is like, okay, there's a problem, let's relabel it as an opportunity. Let's come up with like 10 to 15 like wild, wacky things, because one of the like interesting silver linings I feel that has happened during COVID is all of a sudden things that could never have been possible pre-COVID are now magically somehow possible. And oh, look, we can work from home, and oh, look, we can be flexible and accommodate people's childcare needs, and like, oh, look, we can understand when like people need mental health days, and like, you know, I think that all of these things that were like never ever in a million years when pigs fly happened, you know, kind of things, that is you know, they're possible now. So just being creative. Yeah.
I love that you said that it's about being creative and finding a different way to prepare yourself to connect in this new idea and this new transition time. and how we learn to connect with one another. And Kinnie, you work with many different people, and you've been using the internet, you've been using software to connect with many collaborators across the miles. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience and how you've been feeling working in this transitioning time, doing online performances?
Yeah, well, like I was, I want to echo what Tiffany said about adaptability, because the last 5 years for me has been like, I've been backing out of the performance industry for about 5 years. And so it's funny how, like, sometimes the things that seem like weaknesses or sadnesses are the things, I feel like those are the things that prepare. Like in my case personally, I was just saying this to my mom, and my mom was just saying it to me. She's like, it's almost like you were already preparing for this because of like injuries, and because I had a stalker for a bunch of years, and so it was life became very dangerous for me for a few years. So I really pulled back anyways, and was working in a format that I felt was more comfortable, which is in writing and production. So I think that's like, that whole thing of just once again, my mom, like when I was little, she used to say like, adaptability is the highest form of intelligence. And so I think that that's the time that we're in. And I think it's actually really amazing. And I think a lot of us have been thinking like, yeah, you're goddamn right, I can work from home and I shouldn't need to have to fly on an airplane to have lunch with you. Right? Like, so I think it's like we have moved into the future. It's like, I think that this issue with COVID has marked the beginning of the 21st century, and now we're really formally and officially in it. And so I think with the right framework around that, whether, like in my case, like I say, I was kind of moving into this anyways. So I feel like a little bit, like I feel like a breath, like I feel like I can breathe easier now that I know, because that I don't need to always be like at the party and around all the people and all the things that I always found really hard, that really depleted me. Those, as a performer, like I was never good at those things, all the partying and the stuff that goes on for hours and hours and hours and hours. Now I don't have to do that. Now I can focus on audio work and writing. And so I've just been doing a ton of co-writing, a ton of production. I'm excited to learn some new software. I've met some other like amazing women, like I've seeked out other women in my area that are also like interested and loving production. And yeah, I think it's, yeah, I think like everything, there's a lot of opportunity there. And that being said, I did do one show recently in my case, the festivals that I had booked for this summer, most of them canceled. One of them stuck. And I did go and film a show, and it was pretty weird because it was like an open theater. But how I got my head around it, and it took me about 2 songs to get my head around it, was I remembered, I was like, oh wait, sound checks are often better than shows. Sound checks is like when you're being experimental and you're just feeling the sound in the room and you're like integrating it into your body. And so once I got my head into that moment, the sound, it felt like a good experience. And so I'm going to use that, and I would welcome that for anybody who feels weird about the video performance aspect of the culture we are now in. Think of it as a sound check and think of it as experimentation. So that's my mental trick.
Yeah, that is so awesome. Really being able to transition your mind and your thoughts, like providing yourself that space.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Thank you so much, Kinnie.
Yeah, it worked for me.
Yeah. I really see that as being a way to just not think about that camera and not think about the fact that it's an organic part of the performance.
Yeah.
ShoShona, you do a lot of touring, and now that you've been working with the Indigenous music summer and and changing some of the way that you do business. You're now in the studio recording a new project. Can you tell us a bit about what it's been like to transition your performances? Because your live performances are very energetic and they involve a lot of crowd participation. And how do you find that's been now? Because that's super challenging.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. I mean, luckily my husband is my creative partner also. And so we're not social distancing. And so we've been able to have that, interplay creatively with each other, which has just been really wonderful. And I recognize a real gift during this time. He's also my best friend. So that part's amazing. So I have like this live-in best friend, producer, musician, husband. Where is he? He's in the studio recording right now. Because we also have turned some of our creative energies towards like soundtrack stuff and just working in other forms that we didn't have time to do before. And I think particularly Raven has always been really interested in, and he's really good at it. Like he's kind of gorgeous and brilliant at it. So it's nice for him to be able to stretch his wings. And, it's that adaptability thing where we can invest in those things that for those of us who are just, well, I feel like everybody has been just go, 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 go. And I know personally that I've been pushing really hard for years now and loving that and appreciating the feeling like a lot of gratitude for the opportunities and, relationships and just like seeing the world, which I always just feel like a little girl when I'm on tour and feel very amazed that I get to go to places. But I'm not really missing that, but I am missing the live show. And I think, I don't know how you guys are feeling about this, but, it feels like we're in such an important moment, this uprising that's happening in this political context, around Black Lives Matter, but, also has been about Indigenous Lives Matter. And I've felt like I'm gagged. I can't go out on that stage and I can't have those conversations. I can't release all of those things and be in that reciprocal space of, I go on that stage every night and challenge myself to really speak my truth. And I was sharing with our sister Brenda earlier in a one-on-one, it's just like at the beginning of things, I used to feel like heartbroken and devastated if somebody was offended in the audience by my politic or my truth. And now I feel like, oh no, this is with Thea earlier today. We were talking about stuff, but now I feel like if I don't piss somebody off, I haven't been brave enough.
Correct.
And so I feel like I really miss the opportunity because now online, like you can piss people off or offend somebody. And it's not my goal to offend anyone. My goal is to be brave enough to stimulate a conversation and a reaction of some kind. And then we have the opportunity to like surround that with love and joy and celebration and courage, and challenge people to be courageous, and I can't follow up with anyone. I can't look them in the eye after a show. I can't outpour my love to the person I see in the front row who's crying. So I just like, I can't do those things that are so important to art for me, which is really such a mutual space. And so, I haven't been doing a ton of streaming shows, but I, like you, Tiffany, we've been doing some pre-records to avoid some of the technical stuff that it's just been challenging and we haven't fully figured out as a larger community yet. It's just, my heart goes out to people who are doing a live stream and the tech side is so terrible that their message can't come through. And it's just like, heartbreaking for me because it's not serving us in those contexts. And so we've been doing some of that. I had my first opportunity to be in a room with my band in 6 months earlier this week. And we went into Revolution Recordings, which is like they have a really big room there, as you guys probably know. It's like over 2,000 square feet. And we were able to like really put a lot of distance appropriately and had a whole crew there all masked up, and it felt safe and responsible, and make music together. And that was kind of revelatory. And so, I'm navigating it, but I really do miss it. And I don't know I really miss it a lot. I miss you guys. I miss the community. I miss the showing up for each other in the ways that we traditionally would have. But, I also am magically loving this moment to be still and hear my own thoughts like I have not in years. So it balances out. We're doing it.
I'm definitely feeling that as well. Absolutely. I think as we're all transitioning into figuring out what we do and the way that we do it, and taking that time for just a little health break and self-awareness check, like I think that's the biggest gift that I've taken away from this so far. MJ, tell us a bit about what you've been doing to make money and keep things rolling in all the different realms that you do, because you also do sound design. You are a fantastic studio musician and live performance person. You are booking tours actively. What are you doing these days to diversify that income and keep things rolling for you, to make it creative?
It's funny that ShoShona was saying, like, I haven't like when COVID hit, I was like, okay, it's time to get creative, and I had no creativity, like my brain just shut down. And I think for the good reason, because I felt that it was time, like, we all go into this music industry and we give 120, 30%, and we just go. There's no like stopping. And like in the old time days, they would do one thing at a time and then, pace it. And I feel that this has been so good for me, for my own soul, and for me to ground myself and to find what I want to do in this industry, and to reflect on what you've done the whole time. Like, I don't know if you've looked at your iPhoto on your Mac or your phone, and you look back at the pictures that you did on tour, or the people you've met, or the connections that you've built, the relationship that you've built. And sometimes I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, I did this, or I've met this person, I forgot. And so it kind of just gets back to it. And so right now I've been slowly getting into sound design for theater pieces and films. And now there's a couple of productions or theater productions that are now taking their theater and putting into film. So they're instead of so I'm composing for that, and I thought it was such a great idea, because then they could release it and still get those stories out, and those productions going. And also I'm taking the time to I've had so many projects in my mind how to help achieve or help Indigenous artists achieve their goals, and how to do that. And I think this has been so great, because it really it showed me what is very important in the music industry, and what is so important, what you should be doing, and as an artist, and what can be done. And like we're resilience, right? We find a way to make it work. And that's another part that I had to rediscover for myself. I'm like, no, this is us, we do this, and finding ways to do that. So I've been, cooking up some ideas to overpass what's happening, and how to have it to help artists out there to branch out into the international market, and to also help my creativity, and also working on my own album, but that's something else. Okay.
What? Tell us. Wait, you said something. Go back. You said your own album.
Yeah, well, it's been in the works for 6 years, but that's the thing. That's what ShoShona was saying. Like, you're doing it so much, and you don't have time to do anything. And now it's like, oh, yay, it's happening. And it's what it is I sat down for the last 2 years. I was sitting down with elder Métis fiddlers in different communities, and having conversation about talking about the Métis fiddling tunes and the melodies and where it comes from, and sitting down with them. They've shared that they all come with a story, because that's how you connect you keep the culture alive, is by stories. And that's the only thing we could keep it, because some language is gone. So to keep the culture alive is by sharing the stories. And so I sat down and I got all those Métis reels, and that, like, the old ones, like the ones that were forgotten or never heard or never connected with. And I sat down with some Métis colleague of mine, and we composed, getting inspired by those melodies. So that's what I went to the studio, and we kind of collaborated, and we worked it to create these. It's like I call it like the Métis. My dad calls it Métis jazz, because he's like, that's the thing. But it's like music, it's world music, but it's inspired by those stories, and inspired by those melodies that I want to bring back. I want to give the cool, the Métis music a cool vibe, and introduce it to the next generation that they probably would have never heard. Kind of like Tribe Called Red. They take in like native indigenous music with hand drum, and they brought a style to it. And I've always thought like Métis music is cool too, but maybe giving a different voice and giving something different, and introducing it to the next generation, which I want like my nephews and my nieces to listen to it and be like, and hear the stories with it, and be like, oh wow, this is great. It's like their language at this time or something. So anyways, that's what I'm working on.
Oh, super exciting. Doing that, and you've had the opportunity to travel around the world and hear many different types of music from many different types of people. So should be really interesting to see what you come up with, and I'm looking forward to that.
And I have one more. And my dad found from my great-great-grandmother, who is the first Anishinaabe woman to be a teacher in South Manitoba, found her journal. So it's all in Anishinaabe and in French. And I want to take those lyrics and put it into the songs. And I have different Métis singer-songwriters across Canada who's going to feature into the songs and sing it. But with I think it's just so important to revive those stories and tell them. Yeah.
That's so awesome. That's exciting. So Dawn, you're a pretty big deal these days. I live in Alberta right now while I go to school, and I was walking down the road, and I just saw this poster or billboard of Dawn's backside and his guitar looking backward, and I'm like, oh hey, there's Dawn's butt.
I don't think I posed any photos like that. I'm not sure.
That you know of.
That you know of, yeah.
You've been working a lot in country music, and you've had collaborations with Indian City. You now work with MDM, and you have the fantastic Lori Brown as your music mentor. And you've learned to support your family with doing music. Can you tell us a bit about like what your journey has been? Because you spend a lot of time investing in community as well.
Yeah, I'm going to answer that in 1 second. I just want to say, like, as I'm looking at this screen, I'm surrounded by all of you guys. I don't know where I am positioned on your screen, but it's just so cool that I'm, I know all of you. And, I think it's so cool that I get to be surrounded by these powerful women in the music industry and in the Indigenous community. So that's really cool. The other thing, as you were talking, ShoShona and MJ too, this thought came to me about where we're at right now in the world. And I just wanted to weigh in because I've seen my wife birth 3 of our children, and we only have 3. I remember in the midst of those moments, I didn't want her to be going through that. There was moments where lots of moments she didn't want to be going through that, and it was just like it's beautiful and it's terrifying, it's awful. And kind of what we're talking about in this season is like right now there's a lot of like, it's hard to say that this season's been good because we've lost a lot of people on the planet. The other side of it is, I think what this possibly could be is like the birthing pains of something new to come. Like now I've got 3 beautiful children. We're so glad we went through that, fire. I mean, my wife did most of the work, obviously. But now look, we've got these 3 beautiful kids in the world that have changed my world. And I think they're going to change the world ahead of them too. And I feel like this is going to be the birth of something really incredible for the world in years to come. And so as hard as this is, I believe that there's going to be some pretty incredible changes and beautiful things that happen in the future. And I'm not just talking music. I mean, I think people have more time now than ever to pay attention to the news. And when you look at the media, it's incredible that these movements are happening for Black Lives Matter. And, I think the support for Indigenous people and people of color in general. And that excites me. And I think that the world is taking the time to kind of dive deeper into those issues. And so I'm hopeful. That being said, how I've been able to do all this and support my 3 kids and my wife. My wife stays at home. She's a stay-at-home mom, and music's our sole income. And I wish I could put it in simple terms how it's worked. I think for me, it's just been, I've always been I always say I'm a yes guy. I've always kind of said yes to the opportunities, and I would always say yes first, and then I'd say, well, what is it? That's changed a little more in the last couple of years of my life. The success of the journey has afforded me the opportunity to kind of be more picky and choosy, and because my time away from my family is tough, and as soon as my kids entered the world, my stock went up, and so like I guys, my boy is almost 9 years old now. That's crazy.
God.
Yeah. So he's 9, almost 9. My little girl's 5, and my youngest is 1. And so for me, I think it's literally just been about always being willing to explore the opportunities that are out there. And it's kind of how I got into the country music scene. I was afforded an opportunity to go to the CCMAs and probably a few other things before that. I've always been the networking guy. I'm happy to go out and shake hands, meet folks, and just be myself. And I think, for me, it's been just on making real friends in the industry. And then the country music world kind of opened its door to me, and I was like, yeah, let's see where this leads, because I've always kind of been country-ish. My folks were big bluegrass country players, singers. Whoops, hello, that's my living room over there. And so for me, I come by it quite honestly, and I felt like it was an opportunity that opened itself up to me, and I said yes, and I'm glad I did, because the amount of incredible things that are happening there is just leading to more success, not just for me, but I think for a legacy for my kids. And I mean, maybe this is a bit, heavy on my shoulders, the way that I'm saying this, or maybe I'm big-headed or something, but also a legacy for our community, because I feel like each one of us has an opportunity to be an amplifier of our time right now. And I love operating in the country music scene because I want to be careful how I say this, but it doesn't always go deep, right? Like country music seems to be, let's not think about the problems. Let's just think about a good love song, having beer with our buddies. Whereas I hope, my piece of the puzzle in that scene is that I can take people on somewhat of a deeper journey and let's have these deeper conversations, because I feel like it's not happening as easily there. Because, like when you think about country music, it's like the farmer doesn't want to think about how crappy the weather's been and he can't harvest his fields. He wants to be taken out of that place for a few moments, and country music kind of tends to do that and speaks to that sort of audience. But I also believe that the country audience is hungry for the deeper stuff, and we're seeing that with some of the artists that are coming up. You know, one for sure that I can think off the top of my head is a girl named Tennille Towns, who is absolutely incredible singer-songwriter who is blowing up, and that excites me because it just means that I think that there's an appetite for the deeper conversations. So I don't know if that fully answers your question, but I think for me it's been about saying yes. And the other thing is I've also lived by the mantra of nobody owes me anything. And then that way, whenever the good things come, you're kind of grateful for it all. And you don't feel like like just this morning, we lost a big thing that we were hoping for. But, you know, we forge ahead and we keep going, and we don't sort of get hung up on those things. And, you know, they didn't owe me the opportunity that was there. And you know, we just keep moving ahead. So I think those are two things that I live by: is say yes to everything, especially early on. And just remember that people don't owe you anything, business speaking. So. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. And that's a great transition to the question that I'm going to ask next. And I'm just going to open the floor. So please raise your hand if you think you feel like you can answer this one. Lots of people are interested in about how you're building a team. You know, what are those pieces that you've needed to help you? And how did you even figure out you needed a team? Like sometimes we need people to help us book the actual shows and connect with people. How do you get your music and sell it? You know, whose jobs are those, and how did you discover that you needed that? So who can help me build my team to release the music?
I know I was just on the floor, but I'll just quickly chime in. So for me, those relationships have always kind of authentically grown up from friendships. It's, again, I mentioned the networking thing earlier. I think it's really about being present and being part of those, the conferences that exist. I've met a lot of people in my world of music through conferences. So yeah, I think you have to kind of build a friendship first with a lot of these folks, and then that sort of evolves. At least that's been my story.
I 100% agree. I know all of you simply because of attending conferences. I met Kitty at Amp Camp at the same time that I met you, Dawn, and I've known Tiffany.
Probably like 15 years ago, I'd say. Yeah.
And I've known
pretty darn close.
ShoShona and Raven. I met them through this beautiful music journey not long after I met Alita and Kinnie. And MJ, I've always admired her performances and enjoyed speaking with her from time to time. And it really is about this community. What I do now, working in supporting Indigenous music and culture, wouldn't happen without knowing each of you and the contributions that you've made to linking one of us, all of us. And so how did you, like, I mean, what do you think a manager does? Like, what in that world, I know that you all work in different realms and you take on different responsibilities in the business of your music. What do you see as a person who is managing, and like the strengths or qualities that you want?
I think that right now we're in a really exciting time where that paradigm of needing a manager is kind of not really that necessary anymore. And what I've found is really amazing, like, because I worked with managers like earlier in my career, and then as the internet became a more useful tool, I learned that and this echoes what Dawn is saying too, which is the most valuable thing that you can have in your relationship with any part of your business community is like trust and camaraderie. And then as you build those pieces, like if I'm hanging out with Don and I trust him and I know he's capable and he's a good person and stuff, I'm able to, he would maybe say, oh, you need my help. I might say, oh, I need your help. And then you can contract manage. And I feel like that is an invaluable tool. Instead of saying, because the older form of management was like, can you come on board my project and help me with everything? And then it's like, well, nobody can really do that. So now I think we're in an era in music where it can be like, can you help me with this project? Can you help me with this record? Can you help me get to Europe? Right now, not COVID, because of COVID, that's not happening, but I would really like people to think small and compartmentalize in their business relationships.
Now you back in the day signed with, was it with Def Jam?
Yeah, my first record deal was with Mercury Island Def Jam, and then I've worked with several labels since then.
And so can you, like, from that first contract that you saw and that type of agreement to what you're doing now, can you tell us some of like the contrasts or things that you've grown or changed around those ideas? Because it's two different times, right? And
Yeah, I mean, at that time in the mid to late 90s, you know, that was before the emergence of the internet. So record labels were very important. But they're just not that important. And that's not to say, like, I love my record label, they're very good people. But I will say, actually, because of how we're speaking about how do you find a team, the record label that I've been working with for almost 10 years now, Aporia, those guys, when they signed me, and I was like, why would you sign me? Like, I'm not really exactly what is on your roster. I'm not necessarily an easy artist to work with in that I don't really work in one genre. And they said that the conversation that we had was one of the most interesting conversations that they'd had in years. And that was the reason they wanted to work with me. So that echoes what Dawn is saying about how everything is relationships. It's like, if you click with someone, the chances of your business relationship being trustworthy and beautiful is way higher. Like, I don't mean to speak in super Pollyanna terms, but that's true.
so awesome. ShoShona, you have been working with the Indigenous Music Summit, and over the past 2 seasons, you've had numerous panels with remarkable people. What are some of the things that you have learned, like not only in that realm, but in your own practice?
As it relates to anything specific around team building?
Yeah, around building your team and how you've come to realize that, figuring out the job roles, because you have a large team, and how does that work for you? How do you see those things coming together? Because I think one of the things that some artists struggle with, and especially being alone with not being able to connect with anybody right now, is like, how do you analyze and take stock of like what you need, when you need it, and the timeline and path that it takes to get there?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have so many thoughts on this. You know, when we were starting out, we thought, you know, right at the onset when we first signed a record deal, or right before we signed a record deal, we thought we needed everybody on the team. Like, we needed everything. And it felt really overwhelming, and we didn't know how to do half of it, and we didn't really know anyone yet. And it wasn't really like a realistic expectation on our part at that time, because we weren't actually making any money yet. Like, not anything of significance. But I think we were really lucky in that we were, you know, had been building some relationships just in those early days of like really, I would like to say bravely, but I think it was naively putting ourselves out there. And just like showing up and playing in all the places. I remember we went to this conference and we didn't like register or anything. We like went in the back door and showed up in one of the rooms and just played music with people. And that actually led to our first record deal and our first management thing. And so, you know, it just, some things happen because you meet the right person at the right time and it clicks. But what I've come to know after having many relationships over the years is that that what we all need is really different. There's no one size fits all. I think all artists are looking for that business support on some level so that they can do art. And we all know that this is a lot of work. It is more than a full-time job if you want to raise a family, right, Dawn? Like, which Raven and I have done sort of as a single income, digging roots, and raised 2 boys, as touring musicians, which seems insane, but can work. And I think for us, it was, you know, we have this really great team right now, and it took a long time to get there. It was about having realistic expectations. It was about knowing ourselves enough to know what we really need. And it was about knowing ourselves enough to know what we had to offer. And then it's about, like, you can love somebody to death, and you're like, you could think the world of them and love to socialize with them, have deep respect, and have a meaningful exchange that enriches both of your lives, but they are not necessarily that person.
I was going to say too, like, I think it's really important to make sure that, like, you see everything as a learning opportunity, as opposed to, oh, that failed. It's not really about a fail. Like, I went through 3 managers before I found the one that's right for me, Lori Brown right now, who's amazing.
Yeah.
But I think each one before that taught me how to have a better artist-manager relation, you know? So I think that's really important. Hey,
well, and it's a mutual relationship, you know? It's not like one person's supposed to show up and do all the work, you know?
Exactly.
It's a mutual relationship. And, you know, just today, I talked to 3 people that at one time were on our team as our manager. And you know, they're all people that I deeply care about and value in my life and respect. And for many reasons, that just wasn't the right fit for us. And, you know, and we're working with somebody now that it really feels like the right fit, and we're getting a lot of joy from the relationship. And that's taken many years to cultivate. And I think that, you know, it's not about checking boxes. It's about finding that person that is complementary to your work style, to your gifts and to theirs, and being patient, because you don't know that until you've done the work yourself.
Yeah.
You know, you have to get in there and get your hands dirty and learn about the business that you're in. And then you can develop those really healthy relationships with partners, because that's what a manager or an agent or a label is. They are your partner in amplifying these stories that are so important. And I think it's also super important, I just want to say this, is that you should never be in a relationship that feels like all of the power is on some other side. You know, you shouldn't go in there feeling small. If you feel small, you shouldn't be there. You know, you should be in relationships where people deeply respect what you're doing, and where you feel a sense of your own, like you can hear your own voice when you are in that room and you are able to really hear theirs. I think that's really key. We wanted to sit at a lot of tables along the way, and I'm really glad that those weren't paths that we went down, knowing what I know now.
That's so awesome. Tiffany, you work in film and television and music, and you have also a production side. And can you tell us a little bit about what you've learned in transitioning some of your skills learned in the acting realm into music, and what you're doing now producing television programs?
Yeah. I think that right now is an incredible time to just be like audacious and just like go for it, you know, like there are so many industries, like all performance industries, film, TV, theater, music production, like so many things are in such a state of like, we don't really know what's going on. So this is actually a perfect time to have like crazy, amazing, audacious, huge, big picture ideas and just try them out. And like what Kinnie's saying is just experiment. And this is a great time to experiment, because people are in such flux, and we're looking for people to come up with these big, bold ideas to try and like launch us and lead us into this new reality that we're having. So like, why not? That's just kind of the attitude that I'm approaching to all my work, is this like, why not? And the answer is always no if you don't ask. So you might as well just ask and just try something out and just go for it. And I feel like that has been sort of a big thinking shift in how I'm approaching a lot of this work, is like to have that attitude. And I feel like I had it in some respects before COVID, but I feel like right now has been kind of reaffirmed this idea of just like, why not? And I feel like when I'm like, for example, I just worked on a development project for developing a TV show, and we did it all over Zoom. And like, we had like a writer's room and a whole creation session over Zoom. And it's just like, yeah, it would be nice to be in a room together, but look at what we were able to do by having us all socially distant, and all of us, like, there was more opportunities than there were barriers. And I feel like that's a cool thing about right now. And I feel like echoing what a lot of folks are saying is that it's a lot of time for reflection, and a lot of time for finishing those projects that we've always kind of had on the back burner. And now is also a great time to be reaching out to people who aren't necessarily in your industry, but can be like industry adjacent people, like getting in touch with other producers, getting in touch with we all probably know somebody in the film industry, and they all know other people in the film industry. So it's like, why not take a time to like, hey, let's go for a virtual coffee, and like, let's just like, I know I've been wanting to chat, I've got some things on the go, and do you have like half an hour to like have a virtual Zoom coffee and like do kind of the things that you would be doing otherwise, but now it's almost like you have more permission and more access to people in certain ways, where people are really open and willing to like kind of have these experimental relationships and projects be kind of like, put in front of them. So for me, it's mostly just been this attitude of like, why not? And like, be audacious and be crazy and be wild and outside the box, because that's literally what we need right now for our industries to recover. Oh, you're muted.
I'm going to practice your trick.
Oh yeah. Sorry, frozen.
Yeah. Just close the lid.
Yeah.
MJ, you spend a lot of time tour managing. Quite a unique job role, and it's really a learned hands-on skill. Can you tell us a little bit about like what bands need to do to prepare for touring when we come available? Because that's really important, is like your technical package going overseas. The power is different. Sometimes the rooms are different. Can you tell us a little bit about like what you see as a tour manager for needs, like things that people need to actually think long and hard about preparing for, and what you see your role is as a tour manager? Because if you're a first timer, you won't know. You just won't know right until you do it. So
yeah, for sure. Can I just touch base maybe on the team first? Just sharing my experience. So when I started managing Oh My Darling was my band that I was playing with, and I had the same thing. I'm like, how do you find your team? How do you find your booker? How do you find, like, how do you do that? And what I've learned was I learned every aspect of every team, every like what a manager does, what a booking agent does, what a radio tracker does, and you familiar yourself with every role of your team that you want. And when I started doing it, I started managing. I understood what the roles were for every type of, or like for every
Job, like yeah,
teamworks or whatever.
yeah.
And that made me more aware of what I needed in terms, and what I was gonna ask. So if I needed a booker, I had booked gigs already, and I did the first two European tours for Oh My Darling by myself, having nothing, not known anything, and cold calls. Like I was using Skype and getting up at 2 a.m. and like, doing all that stuff. And then by doing that, I've learned what you needed to do, and then what to go and seek. And I've seeked a couple of agencies, and I knew how to know what what the band needed and where, because all the booking agents are also, they book at different places, different venues, different genre. So all those answered my questions. And also you kind of, if you can do it, you don't need help. If you can't do it, that's when you outsource. That's when you find, okay, let's go see a team. I needed somebody I need PR. I really can't do it. I need some help for PR. Or you know what? I really need some help for managing all my royal rights. I just can't do it. So that's where, if you start learning all the roles of all the members of the teams that you want to gather up, you'll understand what you're paying for and what you want to, what you're expecting, because that's the end result, and because you know what it is and you've done it. So I always tell colleagues of mine and artists who are trying to find some teams is familiar yourself with the roles and what they do exactly, because at the end of the day, you are the boss. Like, they work for you. Without you, they don't have a job. So I'm like, it's good to know that. And so for tour managing, the more organized you are, the better. The more successful the tour is, the more the members are happy, the more the promoters are happy, the more the whole team is happy. And with tour managing, if you're alone, mostly you would have had, either you've booked your own tour or you've had a booking agent booking your tour, and they would have some information that you gather up and you put together. When you have a big band, that's where it gets harder to get all the accommodations and all the traveling together and make sure every needs is taken care of, and that is easy enough to outsource to personnel that does logistics, and I do a lot of that. Just to some artists that comes to Europe or even in Canada, they just don't know, and there's people who sometimes, like, it's a little trick. Like, if you have a friend who's super savvy on research, you could always outsource, like, be like, hey, can you help me organize this tour and get information all together? But it's very hard when you are going on tour and you're like, it's okay, we'll figure it out over there. It's like a no go. Like, never do that. It's like you're setting yourself for almost a failed tour, because you don't have time to plan and to find the accommodation after you've played and chatted with the audience and sold your merch, and so things like that. So to find people to help you do all the logistics and put the tour book together is very important. And booking agencies and management does that, or even if you do it yourself, friends, or email me. I'm totally up. Like, I'll tell you the know-how to do it, and because you are able to do it yourself. And if you do it yourself, I find like you learn so much more about what you want in touring and what you want to do, where you want to go, and how. And so it answers a lot of questions for yourself as an artist. Yeah. And that's just joking. I was like, wanted to do it so long. I was like,
You got me.
Yeah, you got me too.
I was gonna say, like I think a big part of what you're saying, MJ, too, is that you're constantly a student of music education, music business. Like, it feels like you're always going to be learning. You're never just like, I've arrived, I'm there, that's it.
Yeah.
Like even all the pros, like the big shots who are making all the money, like even them are kind of like trying to figure out, what do we do in this season? So it's like everybody constantly has to keep learning. And I think, MJ, one of the things that I really appreciate about you is that you are always aware of kind of, I don't know about the whole world, but a lot, definitely globally minded. And you too, ShoShona, like you guys have kind of been all over the map in terms of, I know Australia has been probably a heavy place for you guys to go and spend some time. In Europe too, I would imagine. And I've only done Canada, and I'd love to, there's so much of a world out there that exists that I have done almost nothing to approach, and I'd love to do that more. So yeah, I think it's really about constantly having the mind frame of learning until you're dead. Like, just be willing to keep learning in the music industry.
Yeah, like when I was sitting in the States with Don Frankenhausen. He was a great artist on Jack Johnson's label, and you know, he's been playing in big arenas, and I remember sitting there, and he's like, being a musician and being in the music industry, you're literally a student 24/7 till you die, because again, like, he was still learning new trades, and also the technology is constantly evolving. It's changing with the weather, it's changing with the generations, it's changing constantly. So you always need to, like, you're never there's no you're there already. It's the gift of learning. Well, I think
You're
you're
muted
again.
There you are.
Senior citizen moment. Auntie's learning this Zoom software beyond me. MJ, you had mentioned something really interesting about thinking about teammates and how you're choosing and roles. And in these roles, now people are putting music out digitally. We've been using Yangaroo and services like digital delivery service to get our music to radio stations and finding radio trackers. Can one of you tell us about, like, how do you find a radio tracker? Like, is it by genre, or is it just by who you know? You know, for you all work in different aspects and different genres of Indigenous music. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and I'll just.
Yeah, oh, there's an echo. Is it just me?
Gone now.
Okay, gone. Okay. From my experience, I've always, when you find out what kind of genre you are, it's always great to connect with different bands who are a bit ahead of you, and to connect with them and ask them questions like, who do you use for PR? Instead of, and do your research, like, look for groups and that are in your same, you know, genre and same collaboration and things like that, and help you get ahead a bit, because we're all here to help. And I've noticed that it's a good help to just reach out and ask these guys, like different bands and that are in that area, and ask for radio like tracking and what they do for releasing and what they do, who did they contact for.
I know for me, like, I've hired radio trackers. Actually, I did my own radio tracking for a while, a couple years ago, probably 10 years ago. And it's hard. It's a hard job because you have to have those relationships. Again, we're going back to relationships, right? And basically with a radio tracker, you're paying somebody for their relationships with radio and, you know, whatever genre you're in. And doing it myself was okay. It was very grassroots, and a lot of, so at least in the country genre, there's like charting stations, which will sort of like, if you get played there, which is ridiculously hard, then that ends up on the Canadian country charts and you get charting position, blah, 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 blah. But there's a lot of secondary stations. Like, I think in Canada, there's like 40 something Canadian country charting stations. And then there's like, I don't know, 200 secondary stations. And a lot of those secondary stations are willing to take a lot more risk on a new artist or artists that don't have charting position. But again, those like to have a relationship with 200 radio folks and constantly be, I mean, that in itself is a full-time job. So that's why you're paying a radio tracker. I've had success with hiring a radio tracker a few years ago, and then when I signed with the record label, they have their own in-house record radio tracker who is fantastic, Dale speaking, and so he's got a great relationship with the radio folks in the country world, and also I think in the adult contemporary and pop world. But even that said, like, I know in my world, like, we've been feeling like we've been sending great music out to radio. But I mean, at least again, in this little corner of the world of country music, I shouldn't say little because it's actually pretty massive. It's really hard because everybody's releasing a lot of great music, and it's not even about great music anymore. It's kind of like you have to have a whole other things in order, and it's hard. It's money I think you have to invest if you want to get played on commercial stations. And I think typically it's around $1,500 to $2,000 for a 12-week campaign, I think. That's sort of been my case, and it's just one of those sort of necessities at the right time in your career. I don't think early on you have to think that way. I think early on you can kind of do it yourself for a while, but then as that, picks up, you might need to hire somebody to take the reins, and that was definitely the case for me. Leanne, muted. And Auntie, you're muted again.
You gotta help me here. Thank you. So what have been some of your investments into distributing your own music? I know that some people are finding popularity and some success with monetary returns on having their music on the Indigenous Music Countdown, which is run by NCI, and that's broadcast all across Canada and into the States as well. So super important. Sign up for Sound Exchange, sign up for SoCan, sign up for MRock, sign up, get your stuff paid. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the ways that you've got your music onto satellite radio, for example? Anyone? Tiffany?
I think, again, what you were mentioning a bit earlier, Dawn, is like developing those relationships with radio. You can also be developing that with different satellite stations, and they're a little tricky because a lot of those folks don't have their emails very readily available. But if you do a little sort of sleuthing and asking around, you can usually find who is kind of on the acquisition side of these satellite stations. And then also, again, can't echo enough what Leanne is saying about like sign up for, go do the forms, do get on Sound Exchange, because there could be a literal pot of money just sitting unclaimed by you that is yours, and you deserve to have that. So like sign up and get those things going your way. And just like emailing, and a lot of the times you might send 3 or 4 and not hear anything back, and someone might say like, oh, I don't handle this, but I'll CC you to, I'll get you in touch with XYZ, with whoever is the person in charge. So just like, don't be too discouraged if you're not like hearing back from people right away. Just keep on sending emails out to ask to get in touch with the right people. And I think usually people are pretty good about, well, I'm not that person, so I'll forward you on to the right people. And asking around, seeing who other people have been in touch with, echoing what MJ was saying, like ask other people who maybe are a little further along on their development, who already have kind of blazed some of those trails on your behalf, and you can send them have a beer with them later another time. But I think if you're just, again, being audacious and just like reaching out and trying to find and learn as much as you can about who those key people are at these different stations is one way. And if you also have like a story behind it, like I feel like people really enjoy hearing the like story. If you have a new single coming out, like don't just be like, oh, hey guys, here it is. Like I've been working on this and here it is. Like I think that people really love to hear the story of like how a piece of music or whatever you're working on has come out, and include that story in what you're sending out, because it's just like, some people probably get dozens a week of like play my music. Can you play my music? This is a new song, whatever. But like, tell us the story. And like, that's what's super unique. And that's what like really touches people's hearts and gets people interested, is like, what is the story behind this? Or what's the inspiration for this? And like, just thinking about what you're saying, MJ, about like this journal of like, you know, beautiful, like, I was like, oh my God, I want to know everything about that. You know, like, I feel like that is such a integral part of the music that's going to come out of, is the story that it was coming from. So paint the picture when you send those emails, because I think people really resonate with that as well.
I really like that you brought us back to stories, and this comes back and it keeps circling back again. And I like this circular ecology about the way that we connect through our stories and through our different being, and how we've gotten to know one another over the years, but how you've also gotten to know yourself through music. In these stories, like, how have you used your story to help shape your music strategy? Because, like, how do you even develop a music strategy? Do you have a way? Have you like thought of, like, you know, did you have a clear path when you first started to wanted to release music and had music to release, to what you're doing now?
You know, for me, back in 2006, I'm going to try to, I'll make this, I won't do the whole, I was born at a very young age. But in 2006, I tried out for Canadian Idol. I made it to the top 75, whatever. And then got cut. And then I realized, man, I was waiting for somebody else to take the reins of my young career at that point and figure out what to do with my life in the music world. And then I went and made my own CD. You can still stream it on Spotify and all that stuff. And it sounds like a guy who's doing it by himself, and you know, a young guy trying to figure it out. But I remember when I first started doing this, and the vision hasn't changed. It was like, I wanted to create music that was going to help inspire and encourage people to do good things for themselves and the world around them. And that's always been my case. And I feel like, you know, when you ask, like, how do you incorporate your story or who you are and what, I just feel like it goes hand in hand. And I think, like, I never want to force the hand of anything. And I think that that's what's really can be tricky when you're kind of, I like, at least for me, dancing in and out of different genres. Like, I've done some stuff in the pop world. I've done some stuff in the roots world. I've done some stuff, obviously, now in the country world. And I think people kind of want to be able to say, which box do I put you in? And going, well, it doesn't matter to me. Like, I want to do what I love. And at the end of the day, I can lay my head down at night feeling good about who I am, because I'm doing the things that feels right to me. And so for me, you know, that story of wanting to help people was the way that I was before music, and it's the way that I am now. And I think that's the piece that I think makes me almost more unique than the music that I bring to the table. So I feel like if you have a vision of how you want to use music to serve yourself, serve others, whatever, I think when you can do that, I mean, I think the nobler cause is to do it in service of others, because then it takes the pressure off of you, right? I in some ways, I think it feels like it's not about me. It's about, how can I do this to help my kids? How can I do this to help the listener out there? I mean, I've got a couple of songs out there that people have come back to me saying, you have no idea, I was suicidal. This song pulled me out of the depths. And I think, who am I to be somebody who has that? But it's like, oh, right, because my intention behind all this at the beginning was to help that person. And if it was only for them, that was all worthwhile for me. So I think it's really about just sort of like bringing your whole self to if you want to be the guy or girl that wants to help people rage and have a great party, then that's your thing. But I think for me that's been my thing, and not the rage and party part. But I think it's really important to kind of just hone in on my friend always says, the why. And I think that helps you on your journey, because when you know your why, all the other stuff is, I don't want to say it's secondary, but you can always come back to that checking point and go, oh yeah, right, I've strayed far from that thing. And I think it can keep you grounded as you go. So yeah.
Can you tell me what's in your festival application kits this year? How are you applying to festivals?
That's right, yeah.
It's not a real thing. Because
He answered the question. That I think Jade just gave a question from Brenda.
Here we go. Sorry, Brenda, I am going to ask your question right now. Can you save a release that's like a year old that didn't fly? Like, is there a way to bring it back to radio later on? You know, would that be like a remix? Would you tell a different story? Is there a way to try it again?
Absolutely, there's a way to try anything you want to do. And you could just use, Brenda, you could just use the stems. Go whoever mixed it, maybe you mixed it, use the stems and remix it, or you don't even have to remix it like in a traditional remix. You can actually mix it again and add new components to it. But make sure if you are re-releasing an existing song to label it differently, because otherwise you mess with your royalties. So just label it differently. I think you can try anything. That's my personal opinion.
Alita, when you say relabel it, you're talking about the IRS. What are they called? IRS?
Yeah, the IRSC codes and the actual title of it. So like if I have, like, say a song of, I'm looking at re-releasing a bunch of old content right now, and I'm kind of in the process of it, which is why I come to that answer quickly. And I really do believe that people can re-release old content, and but you have to make sure the title is different too. So like, say a song like mine, like Praise, I can't release that as Praise. So otherwise radio they don't know it's a second version of the song. So Brenda, if you want to re-release original material, make sure you title it differently. That's my advice. I don't actually know if it's right now that I'm saying it out loud, but I think that's what you're supposed to do. Okay.
Yeah. It's basically you re-record, like you oh my god, I can't. Re-enregistrer.
Yeah, you re-register it.
In SoCan, like a different track. Like
yes, exactly.
Yeah. But you absolutely can. You could do anything. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
That's why you would see it like I've done this kind of number of times, right? It's like such radio version or such and such acoustic version. Like it's still the same song, but it's like a different version of it, and it's labeled that way, and also gets registered that way through SoCan. So yeah, that's an important note.
Super cool. Thank you for that question, Brenda, and thank you all for your responses. Going back to my other question, tell me about what it's like to be considering festivals and applications at this time. Like, we don't know how long we'll be at home and using our alternate creative spaces and our alternate ways of connecting. What are some of the things that you see now are high needs when applying to virtual festivals and performances? Or even doing a conference such as this? Like, I know for me, I have some technical challenges. I do meetings all the time, but I don't like using Zoom, and I don't like having the video conference format. I just find it really intrusive, if that makes sense. Like I love my privacy, but it also allows me the opportunity to get up and move around, or have a drink of water while we're in proceeding. And I'm just finding that you're on the whole time while the screen is. What are some of the things that you think that artists need to be preparing or considering in terms of either gear or short videos? Like, what really helps when you're promoting yourself to festivals and virtual performances?
I would suggest including like an example of a virtual performance in your kit now.
Yep.
I think that that's probably really helpful. And I think that letting people know sort of the added content that you're prepared to bring, because it isn't just about doing live streams, you know, it's about the conversation, it's about connecting with each other, it's about being creative in terms of how we engage, and I think so I would feel really free to like include like some podcasty thing that you've done or experimented with, or a conversation you hosted with somebody on Zoom for your fan base, just to, because I think festivals are also creatively looking at how to engage. You know, some people are hosting listening parties of their albums and just like hanging out because they don't have the capacity to do a live show right now, because for whatever reason their live show doesn't lend itself to this whole deal yet. So I think there's ways to just like be super creative. And I think that festivals are looking to us to sort of source new ideas. And so if you can be one of those sources, I think that you open a conversation. And maybe it's not even a conversation for a stream. Maybe it's for the performance they're planning in 2022 or whatever. So I
I'll
think
tell you.
that's
Oh,
real.
sorry, Sho.
No, it's all good, baby.
I want to just say something about it. This is not about the practice of soliciting digital performances, but I want to share something I heard that was very promising recently, which is that apparently a lot of people inside the Canadian music industry are talking about the face of Canadian festivals for the next 3 years will be highly Canada centric. And so I think that I just thought of that when you were talking, Sho, because I think that that's bodes well for us as artists in our own country. I mean, that's not using the political language of Canada and unceded territories, etc., but just to the possibility of us, you know, like being able to work here in Canada is pretty dope. So I don't know why I thought I'd add that, because it's really not about that actual question, Leanne, but
That's okay.
it's encouraging, maybe.
Yeah, it is.
Right?
Absolutely.
And that's what we're here for, that we're here to give that message of hope, and there's still ways to do this. It's not the way that we might have imagined or conventional, but you know, we all adapt, we're growing, we're changing, and we're also having this time to be able to take stock and then think about ways to collaborate and still move forward and keep our community. And that's the most important. I know I have a personal question, and I know that many of you have had a public profile for quite some time. And what we're seeing in some of these movements are some lateral violence. And I see stuff because I work in arts organizations. I have to deal with sometimes not fun subjects. And how have you found a way to not only share an appreciation for other person's opinion, but also being able to protect yourself as a business entity, as you know, but also just your person, like this work, when you're standing in front of the public, sometimes is challenging. And can you share with how you've been able to navigate some of those things? Because we do deal with some really interesting issues, some very tough issues within our community, but also when we are engaging outside of our community. Can you talk a little bit about that and your experience?
Heavy.
Yeah, that's a really heavy question, and it's something that's very true to my heart, and I'm willing to speak a little bit about that, which is that I feel like I have learned to be careful where I share on social media, and I feel like it kind of ties back to what we were talking about earlier, and maybe it just seems like common knowledge, but I feel like the way the internet works is it encourages us to share everything, including the names of our families, places we go, etc. And I feel like maybe that's not the smartest thing to do, given that lateral violence is very easy if people know where you live and people know who your friends and family and children are. So I have learned, and I would recommend this, to be more careful with what you post and be more careful with who you talk to. And just look at it like the real world, because the internet makes us feel like we are untouchable and that you can just blab and like it's just going to be fine, but it sometimes isn't. And choose put your trust in the people you trust, not in the people that you don't have to tell the name of your great great grandmother to the internet. You can tell it to your friends, like things like that, because family is sacred, you know, like
Mm.
yeah, I could go on forever, but I'll leave it at that.
I think that's interesting, Kinnie, because I share a lot about my family,
Sure.
obviously. And I, as a dad, I often think about like what I'm sharing. My kids will one day become adults, and they'll come back to me going, "Hey."
That's right.
I remember a couple of years ago, I actually shared a picture of my kid. He was so cute. He was like 2 years old, and his butt, like he was like, I mean, it was just this cute little kid. And somebody said, "Hey, you shouldn't be posting this." And then I got to thinking, like, yeah, I probably shouldn't be posting a picture of my own kid's cute little butt on whatever, because it's like you have no idea what people are out there doing. At the same time, you know, I feel like I'm always a heart on my sleeve. Like I always want to be the real authentic Don. And I
Yeah.
haven't, you know, with your question, Leanne, like I personally haven't had a lot of personal attacks. I haven't had a lot of people. And when they do, like, I feel like I've been equipped with an educated mind that I can come to somebody and you know, try to also understand, as weird as it sounds, where they're coming from. Because I mean, people that do that are often people that are, I would say, that are hurt themselves, that are going through things themselves, and kind of like understanding, like, as much as it's not right to ever say anything negative about people, but oftentimes I would have believed that people that are doing that, I have this feeling that they've been really hurt themselves, and they feel like that how they can, you know, put their presence out there and be a strong person is to, you know, offend and hurt other people. And part of that is because they haven't been able to be themselves maybe in some ways in their own lives. And so, but I think for me, there's two things. One, I almost don't, well, I shouldn't say that. I almost always address it in some way, but then I kind of also like back off. And then people that are your supporters, they're the ones that are going to step in and probably jump on their back and sort of like on your behalf defend you. But at the same time, I don't want nothing in anything that I do. I want to cause this commotion of like hatred and frustration. And you said something, ShoShona, too, about how like if you haven't, I think it maybe like made people angry or pissed people off or something, then you haven't said enough, or you haven't been, you know, kind of more. Do you remember what you said? Like it was
Brave
like,
enough.
you haven't been brave enough. And I think I believe there's some truth to that, but I also think that there's a way to do it where you don't have to. I think the boat does need to be rocked at times, you know, but I think that there's a way to do it that is like, I love it when people put me in my place and make me feel good about it. You know what I mean? I think that that's something that I want to do for others, is have them go think about things and go, oh, I never thought of it that way. You know, like here's one that I'm going to post in the next, you know, day or two. This whole, you know, Black Lives Matter movement. I cannot stand, and you guys probably all in the same boat, that people go like, well, all lives matter. I can't stand that idea of people not getting around the idea yet of like, yes, all lives matter. But the problem is that we're not a society that exists that way. And I think that that's partly what, you know, what the issue is right now, is that yes, all lives matter, but we don't live as such that all lives matter equally. And I think that that's our biggest problem right now. And so anyways, I know that's going to push some people's buttons, but I feel like I want to say at least my part when the time comes, because I feel like we've all been given a platform, and I'm not super famous or anything like that, but I feel like I've got an audience that listens to what I have to say. And I think it's important of me to amplify the things that I think are important issues to bring to the table. So that's always been my way of dealing with it. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think I think what you're touching on overlaps with this call out culture, cancel culture stuff. Super complicated. And I've been thinking about it a lot, and I've thought about it for a long time. You know, social media is being actively used on a daily basis as a weapon of lateral violence. And I do think that there's a space that we want to cultivate for accountability. And I think what's happening is not really about that. And that I find it really troubling. And it's to me an affront to our humanity when our focus is on shaming people. And, you know, our fearless leader, Alan Gray Eyes, said to me probably, I don't know when this was, I think he's listening in here, but I remember you saying something to the effect of, and I'm sorry if I don't paraphrase it exactly, that, you know, we can't be a shaming culture. We need to be a healing culture. That's who
Yeah,
we
that's right.
you know. And for me, like in the way I conduct myself, I'm sure I fail at times, you know, but my heart is to behave with kindness and respect. Those are our teachings, even and maybe most especially when under duress, even when, and especially when it's hard. And that's what I would like to be able to expect from other people. I think when that is happening, that we need to, from a place of kindness and respect, shelter each other and protect each other, and not with the goal of shaming someone, you know, because that shame nobody ever learns anything except for fear from shame. And that doesn't cause, fear never causes a fundamental shift. It doesn't create understanding. It doesn't create healing. It never lets us go anywhere. It's a dead end street. So to me, it's like, if we want to grow, that we need to actually be really proactive about this stuff and lift each other up and show up for each other. And which I know is sort of a theme for me, but to me, like marketing, our best marketing tool is each other. And you know, like our most powerful place to stand is when we show up for each other and other people show up for us. And we sort of tend to do that just instinctually commensurate too. And you know, we have different gifts and ways of showing up. It doesn't have to be the one thing, and it won't necessarily be the way you want it to be, or the way you wish you could. You know, people aren't going to show up for you the way that you wish they might, and you won't show up for them maybe in the ways you wish you could. But we keep showing up for each other, because our power in terms of transforming an industry and amplifying these beautiful stories that I love is sort of at the center of this conversation. To me, that is about moving together. That's our power, you know. And we're talking about managers and distribution, all these things. And in so many ways, like so many of us don't have access to those things in any reasonable way, you know, on whole in the industry. It's like, we're still fighting for the smallest bit of airwaves, you know, and really, like, we're very celebratory now because we feel a shift in Indigenous music, but a lot of those airwaves go to very few people, and there is so much creativity out there. There's like groundbreaking stuff being made and dreamed every single day. And so I'm really excited about us learning how to dispense with the lateral violence and stop fucking around with Twitter and calling each other down.
Yeah.
Start stepping up and making sure those stories for the 8th fire are getting told.
I just want to add something to that as well, that I feel like so many of us in not only the Indigenous music community, but just in the Indigenous community kind of writ large, have experienced multiple levels of trauma, multiple levels of intergenerational issues. We're dealing with colonialization at a different rate than everybody else in Canada is. We're dealing with issues that people don't even have to think about, kind of on other settler folks don't even have to think about on a daily basis. We're dealing with them moment to moment. And I think that there's a lot of raw nerves, and there are a lot of like people in our communities that aren't accessing the help and support and having our needs met like the rest of Canada. And I think that also contributes to lateral violence that gets dressed up as some sort of accountability, some sort of Twitter accountability that is actually just so toxic and so call out cancel culture, and is dressed up as something that it really isn't. And I think it's really important for anybody who's experiencing any sort of like, you know, call out or some sort of backlash over something, to like really objectively and as unemotionally as you can break it down and be like, okay, conflict is not abuse necessarily. Disagreement is not abuse necessarily. Having hurt feelings does not mean someone has abused you. There are so many things that get dressed up as capital A abuse today that is just like, is, as someone who has, and I'm sure many of us have experienced actual literal horrible different abusive situations, that it's like, oh no, honey, that's just hurt feelings. Like, you don't need to go on a rampage for something like that. Like, it's not, you know, I feel like that has really been a huge shift in our society, that we label everything as abuse. And for the people who are experiencing it, it takes away their agency and their ability to speak out, because now everybody is in this storm of screaming at the top of their lungs. And it's like, nothing's getting better. Like nothing is getting better because of that. So I feel there's a great book called Conflict is Not Abuse that everybody should read. And it just really helps to break down the roles that we all play in talking about harm, and that there are many different ways of looking at something. And I think that recognizing that lateral violence is like a life-ending thing, and we've lost some really beautiful people, and we've lost some beautiful, incredible, creative people, and that it is something that we do need to take seriously, because it ends careers and ends lives. And we need those people around, because a lot of the time those people are at the forefront of some of this most beautiful decolonizing radical change. So we need thick skins and more love and less Twitter, I think.
Yeah.
I was going to say, what we're talking about here reminded me of that quote, hate cannot drive out hate, darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. That was Martin Luther King. And today is actually the, 40, 50 some years since his I Have a Dream speech. It's today, which is kind of incredible as we're talking about all this stuff.
Well, and the cancel culture movement began in that era, in the 60s, and the civil rights movement, and it was a way for disenfranchised, marginalized people who had no access to justice, who had no access to sort of systems of power, to leverage their collective power on behalf of the movement for freedom and justice. And so I think when we're thinking about the whole cancel culture and all of that stuff is getting really distorted right now. And I think if we remember the roots of that, about leveraging our collective power on behalf of justice, and freedom, and the things that can only really be done collectively, where you don't need systemic power to access it, because it's the power of us, like right here, and us standing with each other. And so, the way that's happening on social media is really, it's just like, it's actually a really offensive bastardization of what the heart of that movement is meant to be.
I think the key, and we're way off of business, I know, at this moment, but I think the key thing that I hope to help people with is understanding that we're all part of the solution. I think so many people stand by going, I'm not part of the problem. And I think the key thing that I'm hoping that I can help people understand is that we are all part of making the bridge stronger. So.
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. And what I wanted to say, what I wanted to ask next is, can you tell us a little bit about what you've been doing to ground yourself during this time? Because it's super important, to treat your body well and feed yourself well, sleep, and embrace those creative spaces. But I know that some of you do some yoga, dancing, that you're active in your cultures. And what have you been doing? What are your go-to things when you find yourself just needing a moment to ground yourself? Can you share a little bit about that?
Sorry, go ahead. You go ahead, Vic.
Well, I don't know if you guys ever came across this book from Christy. So I've had it for a long time, and now that I have time, I've been drinking a lot of tea, because I've noticed that in my backyard, we're right beside La Jumadière National Park. A lot of these plants are there. So for me, because from a young age, nature and walking on, like, for me to ground myself, a lot of times, even if it's cold outside, I have to feel the ground barefoot. I don't know, there's something with the energy. It just, even on tour, I've noticed it gets to my my jet lag. I don't know if you guys tried that, but when you're overseas somewhere, you just walk on the ground where you're at, and for a reason your whole metabolism like kind of just syncs up. Or
well, it's actually scientific, because if you can align with, if you can align, like you imagine the 3-prong grounding thing, and that larger prong is actually, there's a rod at the bottom in your house or wherever you are that goes into the earth and connects with the electromagnetic force of the earth. And so when we're racing around the world and doing all of the things and wearing shoes all the time, our body can't align with that electromagnetic field. So that's a real thing. You can get like things to put in your shoes. You can get sheets to put on your bed. And
or just walk barefoot on the grass.
You can walk barefoot on the ground. But when it's -40, it's not as good.
But
Basically,
I've been just grounding myself with like familiar yourself with nature that's surrounding you.
Mhm.
Like it's full of medicine and it's there to help you. And so it's kind of like a blessing that this kind of happened, because it made me like pause and ground myself with that.
Alan said, the old great wise one, Alan says it's called circadian rhythm.
There you go. Alan, isn't that about when you're how you sleep as well?
Yeah.
It's aligned with the seasons and the
Alan's voice just goes on like a god mic. Talk to us, Alan. You won't do it now.
That was me being the voice of Alan.
Oh, okay.
Not God.
Okay.
Kinnie, you do a lot of yoga, and you taught me bathroom style yoga that I have used years and years to help when I travel. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've been doing lately? Because you've also had some really interesting therapeutic things that you've had to work through.
I was first introduced to yoga when I was a young woman, and I went actually over to India because when my grandmother on my mom's side died, she put a little bit of money aside, and when I turned 21, I got access to that money. It was $4,000, and I went to India with that money. And I remember being there, and I thought that I was an expert in yoga because I had been doing it for a year at that time. And I remember everywhere I went to study, they would only let me sit. They wouldn't let me do any movement at all. And they were like, "You sit," and I was like, "But," And so that was my introduction to yoga, and then from there it merged with martial arts and dance and stuff, and that's kind of how I approach it, is actually more kind of through like Shaolin Temple style approach mixed with yoga. And I am always looking for ways to calm my metabolism, calm my nervous system. And then in particular, I was in a car accident 5 years ago that I've had a lot of physical problems that are ongoing from that. So I feel like injuries and I feel like problems are actually solutions. And when I was first dealing with those injuries, I was sort of like feeling sorry for myself because I couldn't get my arm to do listen to my brain. So I was like, trying to will it and all that stuff. And what it really did is it really tuned me into a lot of my friends who are living in wheelchairs and, or missing an arm, and it clicked in this whole, which I'm super grateful for, because I never knew what it was like to have limbs that I couldn't summon movement through. And so I have just been holding on to that, and I love it. It makes me feel connected to the planet in a whole different way. And I just especially during COVID, of feeling really boxed in and kind of scared sometimes because I can't get to my family, and myself and my older brother kind of support my parents. We have on and off for about 15 years, so it's a little difficult not being able to get there. And so I just try to walk every day. I try to breathe deeply when I'm breathing. I try to, like, in opportunities like this, I am like scanning and being super grateful for how beautiful each one of yous is, and just really trying to like take it in and give it back. And I've also found great joy in observing nature, like MJ, like you were saying, like teas and plants and stuff that I was always into it, but now I'm really taking the time. So I think it's that thing where it's like the bad is actually the good. Like the shit is actually that's where you get to learn. So I hate, I know I can sound really flaky, but that is kind of where I'm at, because I'm like, otherwise I can get very depressed. I'm very sad. So yeah, I walk every day. I highly recommend walking every day. I've actually, like a lot of philosophers and scientists and mathematicians, if you read like over the years, a lot of people in the thinking arts swear by walking, and they have for centuries and centuries, as long as there's been writings. So yeah, I adhere to that principle.
Yeah, I 100% agree.
Mhm.
Well, and
If you really, even especially when you really don't want to walk, walk.
I think, not, we're all spending a lot of time doing this.
Mhm.
And I don't know how you guys are. Tiffany, you're just so statuesque. Like, I have such a hard time sitting still.
Yeah, totally.
I'm changing my feet every 2
Me
minutes.
too.
Like, I can, like, it's so hard for me to sit still like this. So I've started to try and, like, it's one thing to walk to be with your own thoughts, and I think that's really important as its own thing. But I'm trying to walk while I'm on the phone, and
Yeah.
so I don't actually visual into a lot of my Zoom calls. I just call in, and I'm like walking around the neighborhood, walking up and down my stairs or whatever, because the weather, like, just because it's so, I could be here all day and
Yes.
it doesn't feel good in my body. I want to move.
Same.
Well, I wanted to say that it's been an incredible day speaking with you all and learning with you and reconnecting. I have an incredible respect for each of you as a person, as a friend, and what you do. And I look forward to the best in the coming weeks. Can you tell me or give us some parting words, some encouragement, something for those people out there who just need some love?
Play outside, eat when you're hungry, sleep when you're tired, watch a comedy special, just be mindful of your screen time and your social media.
Yes.
Stay off that shit before bed, man. That's just like one of the biggest ones, is like go to bed happy, if you can. And we're collectively dealing with global anxiety, and that's exhausting. So just like, if things are hard, like maybe that's why. And like also be easy on yourself and like still work hard and do your thing. But
wait, I brought my glasses.
Oh yeah, here we go.
And my instrument.
Here we go.
Gonna be played out.
I don't actually know how to do this.
I was gonna.
I got my easy.
Is that beautiful?
I was gonna say the whole FOMO culture, right? The fear of missing out. I've really been thinking about the FOMO thing being more about missing out on the life around you, not on your phone. And so just flip the way you think about that. I mean, we sort of conduct our business online, obviously more than ever. So it feels like it's hard to pull away from the screens, but man, especially, with kids, like there's so much beautiful things going on around me. If anybody out there is listening, hopefully you can, don't miss out on what's happening in the real life around you too, because that's really important.
Oh, I want to say one more thing. Never Google yourself. Never Google yourself.
I do it.
Yeah, it's been, I used to do it for a minute, and then you can find like people like gossiping or calling you down or like talking shit. Just don't do it. Yeah, just don't do it.
And don't look at social media before you go to bed. Look at
ever,
like, cute animals.
like Tiffany said. Yeah, don't look at social media
I don't
before
know,
you go to bed.
And don't do it in the morning before you drink water.
Yeah.
At least that, at least.
Yep.
At least. It's not important.
Thank you so much, Tiffany Ayalik, ShoShona Kish, Alita Kinnie Starr, Don Amero, MJ Dandeneau, the Sākihiwē Festival, Alan Gray Eyes, Jade Harper. And I just want to say thank you to all of you who joined us today from our lovely panel and all of you in Indigenous country. Much love. Masicho Kuinaini. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Hi, guys.
Leanne. Thank
Bye,
you.
beauties.
Bye, beauties. Alan.